Good evening, guys. We're live on this Thursday night, 8 o'clock, on the Celtic FC Appreciation Show. This is episode 4, and it's second of the interviews, the one-to-one interviews. I'm delighted to say that we've got Erin Campbell on from Time to Tackle. So we'll get to the interview in a minute, but just want to kind of run through. We've got some things in the banners. As I say, if you want to follow us, we're on the socials there. Just type in Celtic FC Appreciation. You can get involved tonight. We want to hear your questions, your comments for us, and we'll try and get through as many as possible. And also, if you can drop the guys at Time to Tackle a like and a follow and a subscribe. They're all over the socials, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. So we'll get straight to it. Erin, thanks very much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me.
If you could just give a wee kind of brief intro of who you are and what Time to Tackle is.
I'll try and keep it brief since it's an intro. I suppose Time to Tackle is a mental health support group or a peer support group using football as the vehicle to get people together. So I've played football professionally, semi-professionally, junior level in Scotland for about 10, 11 years now. I've also suffered with poor mental health for that whole time, be it depression, anxiety. It led to a suicide attempt in 2019, which I'm sure we'll cover off at some point. But that sort of put me in the front line on Twitter and stuff. It was a really big Twitter story at the time. It sort of exploded. I spent a month or so in hospital, and when I came out a few months after that, I started speaking openly about my mental health on my Twitter page and sort of documenting it. And myself and my wife started this Time to Tackle support group, and it's very simple. We call it football therapy because I think that's what it is. It's therapy, but it's using football to do that, to bring people together to play, and then after we play, we go into a room and we just have a chat.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing initiative you've got running, you and Siobhan. So in January 2020, I kind of came across an interview that you gave to BBC Sports Scotland, and obviously, like we're talking off air, that when your name cropped up, I was trying to think who it was, and I remember you were on Super Scoreboard as well, and I thought you spoke very openly, very candidly, and I thought it was a brilliant interview. But hearing the interview you did in BBC Sports Scotland, I'll be honest, it did get to me a wee bit, kind of thing. Listen, I cry at anything. I cry at adverts and TV, right? So, but this is it. Really kind of hit home when I seen it. And if anybody doesn't know, obviously it's you attempted to take your own life. If you can, explain if at all what was going through your mind, and what was it that kind of stopped you, that pulled you back from that?
Aye, it's obviously a common question. People want to try and understand where your mind goes to, and I totally understand it. I suppose I'll quickly run through my life up until that point because it gives more context to what happened and probably why it happened. At 15, 16 years old, I signed a professional contract at Hibs in Scotland. I played football my full life, obviously. Like most West of Scotland boys, wanted to grow up, play football. I wanted to play for Celtic, of course. And didn't quite reach the heights. I signed for Hibs full-time, a 3-year contract, 4th year at school, and left school. And by all accounts, at that point in time, talking 2007, I think it was, Hibs were the best academy in the country. Scott Brown, Kevin Thompson, Gary O'Connor, Derek Riordan, Stephen Fletcher, all these guys had gone through 3, 4, 5 years before I'd went there. So I had the perfect opportunity. I'd basically achieved the first step on the ladder. But for me, it just didn't work out for a host of reasons. But it was probably the start of my mental health issues that we didn't know what it was back then. This is 14, 15 years ago. We weren't talking about it as openly as we are now. So 3 months into that 3-year deal, I just went to the club and said, I need to leave. I was going home at night crying. I was avoiding training. I was terrified. I wouldn't talk. The guy you see in front of you now who talks so openly about stuff, I didn't know how to tell people I was feeling. I was just terrified of even going to training. So I went homeless for 6 weeks after that. At 16, I stayed in the Queen's Park hostel right across from actual Queen's Park. And I was terrifying, as I'm sure you can imagine. I was a young boy. I didn't know I was away from home. Even when I came back to Glasgow, I was too scared to go and speak to my family. Just felt really alone, really isolated. Fast forward a couple of years, eventually I'm back playing at Ayr United. I've now got myself a job. I'm not playing football full time anymore. I got myself a career in finance, and about 3 to 4 years into that career, as I started to work my way up the ladder, started to suffer with depression. I had no idea what depression was. My wife, fortunately, is a nurse in A&E, so she has a real grasp and understanding of mental health from a medical perspective. So I think I'd been off work about 3 or 4 weeks. Just couldn't get out of bed. Real physical symptoms I was only eating. I wasn't cooking. I was eating crisps. I swear, I was eating like 12 packets of crisps a day and surviving on that. And I just wasn't moving. Got a dog. Wouldn't walk him. I'd just leave our patio doors open and let him out. And I stopped playing football for about 6 weeks. I lied to the club at the time and said that I had a knee injury because I'd had knee issues before. So I just sort of played on that and said something didn't feel right and I didn't go. Took myself out of that, isolated myself from friends, family, football teammates. And my wife said to me, my fiance at the time, said, I think you need to go see a doctor. And that's when I got my diagnosis, 23 years old. We were expecting our first child, actually. And I was diagnosed with depression. Got sertraline tablets at the time, took them for a while, slowly worked my way back into working back into normal life without really dealing with the issue, without really talking about it. Just, the tablets probably leveled out some of my feelings and went back to work for a couple of years. And then, like a cycle, a couple of years later, in the 2017, the summer of 2017, had another episode, if you like, for want of a better term. Again, very similar patterns. Stopped talking to people, isolate myself. I was injured at the time. Football. I had an actual knee injury this time, so I wasn't able to play football, and that kept me away from my teammates and stuff. I was in a knee brace, and that made it really tough. And I didn't speak to anyone. Didn't speak to my wife. Didn't speak to friends, family. Just started isolating myself again, like I had done previously. And I think that's because previously I'd relied on the tablets and I thought they were helping me. And I didn't make any behavioural changes or lifestyle changes. I just continued on the way that I was. In fact, if anything, I was probably drinking a bit more than I'd ever done. Never been a drinker, but for a couple of years I partied hard. And that probably took its toll on me. Again, in 2017, for the first time, felt suicidal. It was the first time ever. I was going to say first time I ever told anyone. I didn't. I was forced to. My wife came home from work one day and found me in the shower. And I apologise for being so blunt, and hopefully, I don't trigger anyone, but found me in the shower with a knife. And she took me straight to A&E. I was assessed and things like that, and it's the first time that I was actually put through the crisis system of mental health. So I was seeing nurses and stuff daily for a while. And once again, you come round, you start to slowly work your way out of it, doing some of the CBT work with the nurse, facing some of my issues that I was avoiding. I stopped drinking so heavily, stopped doing some other things I shouldn't have been doing. And I came out of that phase promising myself that I wouldn't go back there, probably naively so, because I'd never fully understood it still at this point, and I still don't today, but I understand that a lot better. And again, much like a cycle, just under 2 years later. So what I'd done for those about 20 months, I said that I was going to stop putting my energy into partying or football and things like that. I still played football, but I put my energy into work. And I thought if I could be a success at work, if I could provide for my family in a better way, then I would feel better almost, confusing that materials things and confusing success with happiness. And worked really hard, 14, 15-hour days in an office, and I got 2 promotions in 18 months. I almost trebled my salary in 18 months, so I'd done everything that I'd set out to do. But I found myself in April 2019 in the worst point I'd ever been in my life. And I think a lot of it was because I had convinced myself so much that I was doing everything right. I was working hard, I was providing for the family. We just bought a new car, we were looking at bigger houses and all that sort of stuff. All of that stuff that you think is going to make you feel better. As I said, confusing genuine happiness with success and not understanding what the actual impact that was going to be in my body. I had a breakdown. I can't think of a better word. And my wife had just had an operation, nothing serious, but she was bedbound for a couple of weeks. She had a tonsillectomy. She was really bad tonsillitis consistently up until that point, but it just coincided with me having what would be described as a mental breakdown or a nervous breakdown, where my body just quit on me, my mind quit on me. And after battling for a couple of weeks, the suicidal thoughts started to rear their ugly head again. Again, I didn't talk to anyone. I think I wanted to this time, which was probably the difference, but I felt like I couldn't burden Siobhan with it because she was suffering, like she was physically suffering with something. While the stigma and the shame of mental health is reduced, I still feel that, and I still did feel ashamed for it, and I felt like I couldn't burden her with it this time. And those feelings very quickly became that I wasn't any use to her and that she would be better off without me, because despite all of my efforts, despite everything I'd achieved, I still felt this way every morning. I still felt like I wasn't good enough and I didn't want to be here. I had a young son at the time, he was 3 years old, and I started to think that he would be better off. There was two things that went on in my relationship and my thoughts about him. One was that I was worried he would have whatever I had. It would be some sort of hereditary thing, and I was really worried about that. But probably more, I thought, if he's going to see me like this, it's going to rub off on him, and I don't want him to see this. He doesn't deserve a father like this. He deserves someone to be happier, because he's a blessing. You know, he's my best friend. He was at the time. But your mind doesn't allow you to think in that sort of rational way, but I explain it there. So very quickly I told myself that I was a burden on everyone around me and they would be better off without me. And on Friday, the 26th of April, I attempted to take my own life. I planned it. I knew of a train station in Edinburgh where freight trains passed through the night and didn't stop, so I could go to that station and I could walk out. And I always get emotional at this part, but sorry. Hand on heart, I was going to walk. I just knew the train was coming. I was on my way out, and I don't know what it was. Right, I'm not particularly religious. I have faith in some things, but not like that. I don't believe in any supernatural stuff, but I believe that your brain does things to protect you. You know, you hear a lot about fear and how your brain works off of fear to keep you safe quite often. And I think my brain done something to protect me that night. And I thought I heard my son shout, "Daddy." I just thought, for some reason, I heard that clear as day, and I think it was my brain intervening in some way. And it was enough to just stop me from walking. It didn't take any thoughts away, of course, and it didn't do anything like that, but it stopped me from walking out. And it just made me rethink for the split second, what's happened? Like, where am I? Why am I here? Fast forward a little bit, I go a little mini bus tour of Scotland, almost just so lost in my mind at this point, trying to just going over what happens, how did my life lead to this point, 27 years old, about to walk out in front of a train and leave my wife and son behind. I can't remember a whole lot of the thoughts, a lot of it's hazy. All I know is I spent a few hours on a bridge in Aberdeen, just going over my full life before getting a bus back to Glasgow. And the bus back to Glasgow was just to keep myself safe. I knew if I was in public, I couldn't do anything. If I was on buses and in public, I couldn't harm myself, because all of my thoughts were still around, I don't want to be here, I want to die almost. And I think someone spotted me in the bus, I think, is how the story goes. I'm not 100% sure. But by this point, no alarm bells were going nationwide, which is why my Twitter account and everything sort of blew up in the way that it did. I was on the news, I was everywhere. There was a nationwide search for me. So someone, I think, spotted me in the bus. I go to get off the bus about 7 o'clock on the Saturday, 7 p.m. at Glasgow, and basically the police basically arrest me for my own safety. I'm asked, "Are you Aaron Connolly?" As soon as I nod, I don't even think I got 1 foot off the bus and I had handcuffs on. And that was just for my safety. I was taken to hospital from there, and then sectioned for 28 days. And I spent the next month or so of my life in a psychiatric hospital.
That's so I was getting a bit emotional there listening. Yeah, it's incredible to think. You know, I mean, fortunately, I've not been in that situation, but I think everybody at some point in their life has probably maybe been at that stage, and hopefully they would have done the same as you, and maybe just whatever it was that was telling you to step back. Obviously, being your son, it's incredible to think that you thought that, you know, your family would have been better off without you. Obviously, that's not the case. I know there's a few comments coming through. Paul, who hosts the show Ways on a Saturday, says this stigma that you have to be all manly and can't express or speak about your feelings is changing thanks to more awareness and help from guys like you, using your own experiences and trying to help others. I think that pretty much sums it up. it's incredible. As I say, if so, you kind of created time to tackle, in was it October 2019? So or October 2020 was it? No.
2019 it was.
2019, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, was that a kind of joint effort with you and Siobhan? And how did the idea come about, kind of thing, to start that?
Yeah, so it's fully joint between the both of us, myself and Siobhan, my wife. I suppose the idea started a number of years ago. I always kind of thought I wanted to help others. You know, as I knew I was suffering, I thought one day I'd be able to help others, and football would be the way to do that. However, the real idea from Time to Tackle probably was born in Levendale Psychiatric Hospital in Glasgow. I'm probably going to get emotional when I tell this story again, but I'll tell you the little story anyway. So about 2 weeks into my hospital, so let's start from the start. So I go in on the Saturday evening, basically it's early Sunday morning by the time I'm admitted. Sort of pumped full of diazepam at that point just to help me sleep, just because my body was in ruins. I hadn't eaten, my adrenaline was through the roof, I was just wrecked. So they basically give me diazepam just to get me to sleep for the night. And when I wake up on the Sunday, I'm obviously all over the place, and I kept threatening to run. I can't really remember this. I think I may have tried, but I can't really remember doing this. But basically, what they do when you do that, they put you under a watch. So I had two nurses sitting. I've got a picture of it actually. But two nurses sitting in my bedroom door just in case I made a move for it. And they decided then, you know, after about 24 hours of that, I think maybe by the Monday, they basically said, this isn't the two nurses aren't enough. We want to move him to the locked ward or the PICU unit. So they put me into a locked ward. Now, the only reason they're locking people up is because they're really concerned for them and concerned for their safety. So in that ward was full of really, really ill people, really unwell people. And it's scary. It was really scary. Here's me, you know, suffering with depression, suicidal, but put in there with people who are maybe suffering from schizophrenia, people with bipolar, personality disorder, some really unwell people, and it did scare me quite a lot. But what it done to me was it kept me safe. It meant that I couldn't go anywhere. So all ward doors are locked. You're only allowed in a handful. There's only 3 rooms that you can go in during the day, and they're all staffed. Your bedroom and stuff in the corridor to bedrooms are all locked during the day. You are fed in the kitchen, in the dining room is only open when it's feeding time, and you're fed at only those times. You're not allowed any of your own supplies. You need to keep them in a store cupboard and ask for them at certain points in the day and things like that. So you're basically, most of your freedom is taken away from you for fear. It's nothing other than just keeping you safe. But after about 11 days on that ward, and every day you're speaking to nurses, you're engaging with doctors, you're speaking to psychologists and things, trying to work through stuff. And that was the first time in my life I was forced to speak about it every single day, about how I was feeling and what had happened, and actually start to work through it properly and work through some of the issues. But about 11 days into the stay in that ward, the doctor sort of made the decision, having spoken to Siobhan, that because I was an active guy, because I hadn't been outside. The only way you could get outside was if you smoked, and the staff would go out for a smoke break after meals, and they would take certain people out. I didn't smoke, so I hadn't been outside for the best part of 2 weeks by this point. And they sort of decided that as I was starting to show progress and make progress, and that if they didn't give me a little bit of freedom and some fresh air, that maybe I would start to regress. So they spoke to my wife and I think maybe some of my family, but basically said, you've got 15 minutes today. We want you just to go a walk and come back. And if you come back and everything goes well today, we're going to give you an hour tomorrow. But for the hour tomorrow, your son and your wife can come down. And as long as you stay in the hospital grounds, you can go out. I'd sort of seen my son and Siobhan almost every day, but I'd seen them in a room, honestly, the size of a dining table. It was tiny. I couldn't do anything. I could just sit and chat to him. We couldn't play. We couldn't do anything really. And he was 3 years old. You know, keeping a 3-year-old cooked up in a room for an hour's tough work. So the visits and stuff weren't particularly nice. And when he had to leave, it was always tough. So getting the opportunity of an hour outside, there was no way I was going to do anything in the 15 minutes the day before. So I went a walk, and it was early to mid-May at this point, and just felt like such a relief to just get outside. And it was the first time in my life I felt grateful to be alive. And I know that sounds stupid, but genuinely felt like grateful that I still had life. I had the feelings of like the first 27 years had almost been a little bit of a dress rehearsal, and now I could maybe try to help, or maybe try to help myself firstly, but now I could do things differently, and I had to do things differently. Fast forward 24 hours and I get an hour outside with my son and Siobhan, and basically Siobhan tells Rory, my son, you're going to see Daddy tomorrow, but we're going to go outside and you can play on the grass in the hospital. And this is how I know football and how big football is in my life. My wee boy says to his mum that, well, we better take Daddy a football then. Sorry. And that's probably what was the birth point of Time to Tackle, because that was probably when I realised that even my wee boy knew that football would be what I wanted to do when I got outside. That's when I realised that football was an escape for me. So I've had a below average football career. I probably could have and should have done more, like most guys will tell you when they sit in a booze on a Saturday night. But the one thing that football's given me is an escape like no other. When I cross that white line, I get a freedom, a confidence, a desire to play like I don't get in any other aspect of my life. I become a different person almost. And my 3-year-old wee boy understanding it and bringing me a football to run around with for that hour that day, and the first time that we could play, that was the point that I knew football was the thing for me that would keep me going, but could also do it for others, because there's people who love it just as much as me. Get released from hospital in the early June. We went straight on holiday to Cyprus. We came back and went to Ireland for a while, because I don't think I was fully ready for normal life yet. So we just got away from everything, away from everyone. And then when we came back, sort of late summer, heading into August, we started planning what is now called Time to Tackle. We weren't quite ready to kick it off yet, so we gave ourselves a little bit of a time, but we were talking about it for a long time. And then one night in October, Siobhan and myself were sitting on the couch, and again, it came up in conversation that we wanted to do something. And if you'd known my wife, you'd understand this, but she just said, I'm sick of you talking about this. I want you to do something. And she made me book a pitch, the local five-a-side. She said, just do something. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but you'll never know. So sure enough, I email in, I book the pitch. And then her main input to it was that we could get people together to play football for an hour, and that would be great. It would really help them physically, it would really help them mentally. But she was really determined to do something a little bit different and unique. And the way to do that, in our eyes, nothing, well, we certainly hadn't seen it before, was that after the hour of playing football, we encourage people to come in and chat. And the chat, it can often be quite heavy, but doesn't always have to be. It can be about Celtic, football, Rangers, anything. It can be about food. I've sat in the room and spoke about food for an hour some nights, because that's just where it goes. But Siobhan was really, really interested in trying to make a real difference in giving people, not advice is the wrong word, maybe guidance, using our experiences to help them, maybe helping them think more positively about themselves and things like that. We try and keep it as positive as we can, but give them somewhere that if things are going on in their lives and they are struggling, they have somewhere that they can come and they can trust, and there's a safe environment and there's no judgment. And that's where the chat session was born, and that's where Time to Tackle was born. And the name, funnily, came from that same night. We said, right, we need a name for this so we can create the Twitter account and the social media. And we had no idea. We didn't want to put mental health into the name because we didn't want to scare people away, because I think there is still a remaining outstanding stigma, which is part of our work to break that down. But we didn't want to only tag it to you have to suffer from poor mental health, because we've got an understanding that people get stressed with work, with kids, with families. People have grief in life. Sadly, things happen and you grieve, and we just want to be there for everyone and anyone. That you don't specifically have to have a mental health issue. So we wanted to avoid that in the name. So we started going through footballing actions. So it was like pass or shoot or cross, and tackle felt like a good one because it had a double meaning. We could sort of tackle in football, but you can then tackle stigmas, you can tackle poor mental health. So we just came up with Time to Tackle, and that was how it was born. We booked a pitch, and on night one we had 7 people. By the turn of the year, we were catering for 30, 35.
It's an incredible rise. It just shows you how quickly these things kind of grow. There's a few comments coming in. One from the Celtic FC appreciation page. I know who it is. It says, I've been there myself. With the support of my friends and family, I've been dragged from the gutter. Massive respect for speaking up and telling your story. Absolutely inspirational. Paul McClellan saying, I remember you playing for St Roch's. And what an emotional story. I just want to put up as well, if that's okay, we've got some helplines. I'm just going to kind of keep up on the page throughout the stream. If anybody is struggling with anything, there's just some helplines there. Obviously, you can contact Paul and Siobhan at Time to Tackle as well. So kind of leading into, obviously, he says, how Time to Tackle was born. How easy or hard was it to get football centres on board like Glasgow Green, Shawlands, Root and Glen Park? With were they quick to kind of jump on board once they realised that it wasn't just a case of somebody booking a pitch for a kickabout kind of thing?
I need to pick my words carefully here, I suppose. These football centres are happy as long as they're taking your money. So
yeah,
we initially did just book it often as we're just booking a 5 pitch and we want a room. When we moved to Glasgow Green, that came about in the January of 2020, and that was because, as I said, by the end of the year after launch in October, we'd outgrown the initial place. So we were at a place, Pro Soccer in Rook and Glen Park, and the room was just too small. We'd outgrown it. So also Glasgow Green felt central to the city and it felt like it was more accessible for more people. So when we moved there, it was probably the first time we'd actually sort of said why we were booking, and they were really accommodating. Sadly, they couldn't give us any discounts despite my numerous attempts, but their accounts alone and things like that just don't happen with local authorities. But they've been great. It's been such a good place for us to host. We've seen the numbers just continue to grow there. Sadly, obviously, we got shut down and we've not been back to Glasgow Green since sort of February last year due to coronavirus. I think maybe we had 2 sessions in between then at Glasgow Green, but they've pretty much remained shut for over a year, which has been difficult for us. But it's not something when we're booking places directly. It's not something that we've really shared and said. Goals down at Shawlands have given us a few discounts along the way when we started our Sunday group there, and they were helpful. But at that point, coronavirus was it was the summertime, so we'd lifted the lockdown slightly, but we couldn't get the room or anything, so we weren't doing the talking park. We were just playing football, so they were fairly understanding. But what I will say is, football clubs, we've had so many reach out and look at partnerships and collaborations. Charities have reached out the same. Everyone is really welcoming, is really accommodating, and really wants to try and assist us in our work. And it's been really well received, as you've seen, some of the coverage we've had in terms of BBC coming to see us, and I've done Go Radio a few times, their football show. I've done Super Scoreboard a couple of times. Everyone seems to really be behind what we're trying to do, which is fantastic. So we've got a lot of big plans. Obviously, restrictions change slightly in Scotland on Monday, but our big date is probably the 17th of May, where contact football will be allowed again. And from then into sort of June, July time, we've got huge plans, and everything that's been on hold for the last 14 months or so, hopefully we'll be able to start getting moving.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you mentioned, some clubs you are kind of getting interaction with. A couple of clubs like St Mirren, Motherwell, and I think you had kit donations from Clyde FC as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I've never once written to any club or anything like that to say this is what we're doing, can we work together. It's all come very organically through them seeing us on Twitter or seeing us and some of the media coverage we've had, and they've reached out to us. I think what we're getting with the handful of clubs that we're going to be working with initially is that there's a real commitment from them to give back to their community. There's a real understanding, especially Motherwell. Motherwell, I think, are lauded up and down the country for their work in mental health, and the Motherwell Community Trust, who we'll be working with directly. There's a real commitment to trying to make a difference in their community, to provide support to those struggling. There's been some heartbreaking stories come out of some of the Motherwell supporters groups and within the North Lanarkshire area. Sadly, there's just far too many lives have been lost to suicide. So they're really, really committed to getting on board, to getting us on board and getting us into work in the area, and hopefully reach out to some vulnerable people, get them along and try and give them some of the support that they need. Now, it's important that people know we're not, Siobhan's obviously a medical professional, but, I'm not, and the other people working with us won't be. We're here to provide a support network and to signpost you to the right help. But it's really important that people are, engaging in medical help as well if they need it.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about people kind of getting on board with sponsorships and all the rest of it. I just want to mention Yappa. In
Yeah.
terms of they obviously sponsored your kits and got involved. How instrumental have they been in the success of the kind of rise of Time to Tackle?
Yeah, so Yappa were the sort of initial backers. I mean, anyone out there who's ever tried to start something like this, money is very quickly becomes the number one issue, sadly. I'm not going to mention our costs on here, but initially, myself and Siobhan sort of self-funded it for a while to sort of prove the concept, if you like. But we couldn't have done that forever, sadly. And you have to start, trying to find ways to do that. We fortunately so far haven't had to go properly asking around and trying to. I know money's tight for a lot of people right now, but Yappa stepped in at a time back in the early days to try and help give us a foot and get us off the ground. Which is why we put them on the initial match kits. Now, we've not got to wear them yet because, again, coronavirus has stopped that, but we're hoping to have some matches. And again, the matches that we want to play, it's not about competitiveness, it's not about anything like that. It's about giving people opportunities to play 11-a-side football if they want to do so. It'll be either in-house matches because we have so many people now, or we'll play against similar groups to us. I don't foresee a point where Time to Tackle ever have any sort of competitive team or anything like that. It's not what we're about. It's not what we're interested in doing. We want to just, it'll be awareness matches, maybe some tournaments and things like that. So Yappa were really helpful in the early days to help get us a footing and get us off the ground. And the app that they're slowly putting together and starting to build is fantastic as well.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned there, the kickabouts. I think you played down in Blackburn against in a charity match or some sort. You played at Tory Glen against, is it Men versus Matter or Men v Matter?
Men Matter, yeah.
Yeah, Men Matter, yeah. Obviously, as you say, it's all about coming together and just, being there for each other and that wee kind of bit, that wee bit of support kind of thing, I suppose. You also took part in the Celtic Foundation, Celtic FC Foundation. You'll Never Talk Alone.
Yep.
So obviously that was a 40-mile walk from Celtic Park to Hamilton.
So that one was 9 miles. So we actually Time to Tackle arranged that. So we were the forefront of that walk. So basically, obviously I'm a Celtic fan. My wife's Celtic daft, my wee boy's Celtic daft. So I wanted to try and give something back to the foundation. I knew of the foundation's work and all the amazing stuff that they do already. I knew also I'd heard through a friend that they were looking at maybe doing something in the mental health area. Specifically around loneliness for them was what they wanted to get at, because I think that plays a huge part in people who have poor mental health. It's something I've suffered from, as I've said. I can find myself at times feeling fairly lonely. I can isolate myself very quickly if I'm not feeling good. So we wanted to try and raise money for the foundation to aid the sort of launch of You'll Never Talk Alone. So we spoke to them. And we had a couple of sit-down conversations. I really liked the theme, the walk and talk theme. I'd done one with some guys down south, walk and talk MMH. So I'd done an overnight sort of 44-mile walk from Reading to Fulham with the guys. And I just loved the concept of it. Now I knew I wanted to try and make it get as many people on board as possible. So doing something like 40 odd miles wasn't going to be right for the foundation one that we'd done. So we just picked Hamilton because it felt reasonable, even though it was 9 miles in 3 hours. I felt like at most people could perhaps take part in it. I think we ended up with over 40 people doing it, and we raised something in the region of 6,000, just shy of £6,000 for the foundation. And all of that was then put into You'll Never Talk Alone, which we took part in the two of them before it got stopped with COVID as well. And again, just something brilliant that, our club, I know as Celtic fans, we speak about the charitable ethos of the club and how the club was founded. And I think the foundation really carry that forward today. I think when things get lost up a little bit in modern day football and a lot of it becomes about performance and winning games and investing in the team, I think we are very fortunate that our Celtic Foundation will continue to uphold the charitable foundations of the club, and that's something that I love, which is why we arranged that, and hopefully it's something that we can make an annual thing alongside the foundation once it's safe to do so again.
Yeah, as I say, it's all about I play five-a-side. I try to play five-a-side most times. as I say, it's obviously been tough on everybody, especially even if you've not played football. Obviously, the last year and a bit has been tough, and everything's ground to a halt. Obviously, thanks to apps like Google Meetings, or Microsoft Meetings rather, and Zoom, you and Siobhan were able to still stay in touch with everyone. What sort of things did you put out? I know I seen that it was like very much like hashtag daily challenge, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what kind of things did you get the guys to do just to kind of keep them motivated and keep them busy?
I mean, much like everyone, our lives changed in March last year immeasurably. We went from running two groups a week. So we were running in Edinburgh, we were running in Glasgow, and we were in process of launching more at that point. And then before we knew it, we were completely shut down. And by that point, we were probably having about 40 odd people in Glasgow each week. We were probably supporting about 70 people in total across the two groups. And we created a WhatsApp group chat in the early part of 2020 to just try and keep people updated. So if you'd engaged and come along a couple of times, we would add you into the WhatsApp. So it gave you another resource beyond just the weekly group. If you were really struggling, you could put a message in there. Also helped people connect more than just a weekly meetup, and it also helped us to share information with the people who were coming along. So obviously come March, everything got shut down. We had to adapt and try and think of ways to keep people connected. I think we started using stuff like stay safe, stay active, stay connected was sort of the slogan we started pushing quite a bit. At that point, we all thought lockdown was going to last 3 weeks. You all remember that, hopefully, when we first went into it. So we thought we'll start a daily challenge on our Twitter and our Facebook and stuff. And it was stupid. Some of it was silly, some of it was proper stuff. But that was about just keeping people busy, trying to keep them active, trying to keep them connected mainly, trying to keep them speaking. So we've done like playlists where you tell us your favourite song, tell us your favourite workout song, tell us your favourite chilling song. On a Sunday, we would do self-care Sundays. We would encourage people to have a bath, like you have a nice bubble bath, go have an hour to yourself, listen to some music, do a face mask. Be numerous pictures on Twitter of me having like with one of those charcoal face mask things on and things like that. We were doing walking challenges, keep you uppy challenges. We've done keep you up with toilet roll like everyone else. I think we done that for about 3 months, and then you just run out of challenges to do. So we obviously reverted to having weekly Zoom calls, and they were great as well. And they stayed up until about a month ago. We were having weekly Zoom calls the whole time. We also done a care packages. So we done our mental health care packages in May last year. And that was 250 care packages, which were made up of a couple of self-help books, a notepad and a pen to encourage journaling or writing down thoughts and feelings, or encourage keeping diarising. What else was in them? Stress balls, lavender oils, which are good for relaxation and sleep. There's another couple of things in them, face masks, sweeties, things like that. But it was just, so we'd done that, and that was like nominate someone to receive a care package. So we handed about 60 or 70 out to our group members, and then we done a nomination thing on Twitter. We gave some to some of the football clubs we've been working with, Motherwell, St Rochs and St Mirren. We gave them some to hand out, and they went down amazingly well, because what we'd done was we put a lot of thought into them. We didn't just buy anything. Like the 2 books that were in them were books that I'd used, one called The Recovery Letters, which is a list of letters from people who have suffered and overcome poor mental health, and they've written letters to you as a reader to read and sort of help you get through. And the other one was Good Vibes, Good Life by Vex King, who is an author. Vex King actually donated 200 books for free. So me being a West of Scotland boy who you couldn't mark my neck with a blowtorch, I think they say, I just got his email and sent him a message, and they get back to me and donated me 200 books, which was incredible. But again, that's a book both myself and Siobhan had used. It's a sort of self-help book, but it's just some amazing stories in it, some amazing things to help you on your life. So everything we put in there was something that we used in our lives. And as I said, I've said it before, everything we do is based on our own lived experience, and we're using what we've been through to try and mould what we do going forward. And that's been pretty much it throughout lockdown. Obviously, we had the wee period in, I think it was August, roughly, when the lockdown was lifted, it's like when we were allowed to go back running groups. I think we had 5 weeks, we had 10 groups on. We had nearly 400 people at those 10 groups, which just sort of shows the desire and the need for what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about kind of just chancing your arm, and I was saying to one of the singers I had on last week interviewing her, and she was from County Mayo, and I says to her, I says, there's a saying up here that shy wains don't get any sweeties.
Yeah.
So you've got to brass neck it. As I say, I've started doing the podcast not long ago, try to get it onto Spotify, and I've managed to get a couple of big names coming up on the podcast in the next couple of weeks. So, you've just got to get it out there and on Twitter and social media, and just start mentioning people, mentioning clubs, and hope that you get a bite, kind of thing. We mentioned Zoom earlier on. It's a great way to communicate, and you also got Michael Byrne on to chat to everyone. How uplifting was that for everybody?
For those who don't know Michael Byrne, I don't have his Twitter handle and stuff, and I wish I did, because he's someone you need to check out, and he's written his own book now as well, which is fantastic. But Michael's a great guy. So in February of last year, I done my first sort of speaking event. I'd been asked a couple of times, and I thought I'll just do this one, and that's where I met Michael. And Michael's story is unbelievable. I won't tell it for him, but very quickly, he survived the Clutha. His dad was murdered. He had this cancer scare. Just loads of really traumatic things have happened to him in his life. But Michael's channeled all of that energy into just helping others, and he's just a fantastic guy. I remember when I was doing the speaking event, Michael was on before me. Now I was nervous as nerves could be. As much as I'm fairly comfortable now at that point, I never considered myself to be a public speaker or anything like that. I was very much in the early stages of sharing my story, and I'm just sitting listening to this guy with 15-minute slots each, and I'm just sitting. Michael's absolutely nailing it. People are in tears and watching him, and I was just like, how do I follow this up? Like, I was terrified, but we've stayed in touch since. He's become a real close friend and confidant, someone that I can lean on, because he's got tremendous experience in helping other people, tremendous experience in his own life. And his story was really powerful for our group that night. And it's something that we've tried to do as well. I think a lot of us there was only so many Zoom quizzes you could do. There's only so many Zoom calls you could do. So something I tried to do quite consistently was to get speakers in or get people in to tell their story. I think there's a real power in that. I think it's something that's not done enough. So people like myself, or people with stories similar to myself, telling people that there is a better way. Because we all hear, sadly, and we should hear it, but when lives are lost, we hear a lot about it, and that's absolutely right. And of course, we need to acknowledge that, and we need to grieve those people and give them, give their families the opportunity to do that and be speaking about their lives in a positive way. But also, I'd like to see more of hearing about people who have been fortunate enough, like myself, to come out and have the courage to speak, and to show other people that there is a path that leads you back into the light, so to speak, and really helps you, and can help you.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as I say, it's brilliant. I think when you get to know people like that, that's been through, as you say, traumatic experiences, and kind of it's life experiences that you can draw on and kind of learn from it. A few comments coming in, Don, very inspirational, and I hope it encourages other men to speak out if they need help.
Thank you.
100% respect, all the best. Keith, who runs the Come On Hoops Celtic page, brilliant stuff. I'm just going to Paul that helps us host the show on a Saturday. He's also a DJ, so he's saying anytime you're doing some fundraising or an event, I'd be more than happy to help with anything music or DJ related. So
Very kind.
I can put you on to him, and obviously, I know I can speak from me and Michael that are on the page. We'd be more than happy to help with anything that's needed, kind of thing. Whatever it is, just kind of name it, because I think it's amazing what you guys do. And you kind of stole my thunder when about the care packages, because I had a question about that, but it was you covered it anyway. Listen, success is always going to follow when something good's created selflessly. As well as raising money, you ran 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. One of my mates' brothers done it. Listen, I don't think I could run 4 miles, let alone every 4 hours for 48 hours. How amazing was that to raise money for? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know what it is, right? But I'm the type of person who just needs to set myself challenges for some reason, but then set myself challenges and not prepare for them. this thing in my head that I just enjoy overcoming, and in doing so, I just set myself crazy challenges. I think about a month and a half before I'd done that, I just woke up one Saturday and ran a marathon. I'd never ran a marathon in my life. Just woke up and decided one Saturday that I wanted to run one, and sure enough, I just went and ran it, and it nearly broke me. But I don't know why. I just have this weird tendency that I need to challenge myself consistently, and that's where that challenge came from. Now, I wasn't initially going to raise money for us. I decided maybe a week or so beforehand that I was going to do it. So I'd seen the challenge. David Goggins, again, if you haven't heard of him, he's worth looking up. I'd been listening to his book. I'd already heard of him previously just through motivational videos and the like on YouTube. And he'd done this challenge, run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So I just decided I'm going to do it. I feel like doing something different. I feel like just doing something crazy. And I thought the least I could do was try and raise a little bit of money for Time to Tackle. At that point, we were hoping to get our groups back up and running, and we needed to buy, or we were raising money to buy like a couple of 100 footballs and cones and bibs and stuff like that for all of the new groups that we had. We've not managed to launch them yet, but we have the money now there for the kit, thankfully. And I just done it. I was struggling with a calf strain sort of in the lead up to it. I wasn't doing much running because I was sort of nursing this little calf injury, but I just decided I need to do this. I think I'd done 9 runs, and in the last 3 I had to walk, just because honestly my calf was in bits. Genuinely, it took me about 2 months to recover from that. My legs just never felt the same for ages. I think the thing about it was, I mean, running 4 miles for me, I'm fairly fit. Running 4 miles isn't hugely challenging. I can do that fairly. I think I was doing it 32, 33 minutes probably. So that meant I had 3.5 hours to try and rest. But that also meant I had 3.5 hours to then try jump in an ice bath, then try and eat something and try and sleep. And I didn't want to eat. Your adrenaline was through the roof, so I had no interest in eating. And I just couldn't switch off to sleep. So I didn't sleep much between it. I just had to keep up and keep going and keep running. So it was hellish. It was absolutely hellish, I'm not going to lie. But at the end, there was just a euphoria of completing something and overcoming a challenge again. And it's something that I would encourage people to do. Don't set yourself, create crazy challenges you're incapable of. But, there's something really, really euphoric. There's something really good for the confidence and self-esteem. I think I've had real confidence and self-esteem issues for most of my life. It's going back to childhood and some childhood traumas and the like that we probably don't need to dive into, but it's really impacted that aspect of my life, and that's led to a lot of the issues that I've had. So doing things like that challenge, it helped me boost that, and that's my way of trying to keep myself going, trying to keep myself right, and trying to improve my well-being.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's. I was trying to work out. I was never good at maths. Trying to figure out how many runs it was, but you also won an award, the Scottish FA Grassroots Merit Award. How did that come about? Obviously during lockdown there wasn't any big ceremonies, so that would have been amazing for you guys to go to. But was it just kind of posted out to you? Was it done in the kind of download?
Aye, so pretty much we've initially won a volunteer award for our services and our commitments to football, and it was just someone who put us forward for it. I think it might have been someone in the group actually. It just put us forward for it, and we were picked out of a panel. We were picked by a panel out of a handful, and then all the different region winners. So we won it for the southeast region of the country. All the different region winners were then put forward to a separate panel to pick the merit award for the award nationally, and somehow we won it, which is crazy. To think we won it for a few months. We'd only been delivering a few months at this point. We were shut down for a lockdown for most of the time, but it's just amazing to think that people like what we're doing and like it enough to put us forward for awards and also to give us awards. Now, awards are fantastic, of course. It's not why we do it, and it will never be why we do it. It's nice to be recognised, and we're very grateful and very thankful. And it gave us an extra bit of, airtime. It gave us an extra bit of being noticed and people understanding who we were, which is great, and that's the main thing for it. It also helps people see that what we're doing is the right thing, or what we're doing is good, and what we're doing is valuable, and it's a valued service, and that's fantastic. It's good for us to have that, to have the confidence of others, especially the SFA, when we're working in football. I mean, the SFA are the governing body for the full country, so it's great that they notice us and they're aware of us. And that hopefully is giving other people out there the confidence to reach out to us. And that's the main thing. The award is great, but it's more about the awareness of our service and what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's credit to you guys for everything that you've done. You deserve it completely. Just in terms of some stats, I know Paul's put a comment I'm going to put up in a minute. Just some stats. I mean, in the first wave before lockdown, in terms of anxiety, worry, depression, and people becoming ill, I was amazed to hear that in the first wave just before lockdown, 62% of adults felt anxious or worried. 58% of those became ill. I think there was a 30% increase in anxiety amongst adults between June and January. And I think it was yourself that says people would rather listen to your worries for an hour than a 10-minute eulogy at your funeral. What would you say to anyone who was maybe struggling, maybe at the point you were at, and try and kind of talk them round, kind of thing? What would you kind of say to them?
I mean, I think the first thing has to be, if I'm speaking to them directly, I need to make them know that I understand. So firstly, it's about telling them that it's okay to feel this way, and it's actually quite a normal thing to feel this way. And I think that's number one, that you need to ask them if they feel at risk, if they are suicidal and the like. You want to be direct with them, ask direct questions and try and get as much information. But if it's about gaining their trust and wanting them to feel that way, to feel like they can trust you, then I need to get them on board. And by doing that, it's about, asking them and speaking to them in a very direct way. But to tell them that it's okay and to tell them that it's not their fault, I think is another big one. I look back retrospectively now and think maybe if someone got a hold of me, told me that it was okay to feel like that and that I wasn't feeling any different from some other people and that I wasn't alone, and that it wasn't all my fault, then maybe I wouldn't have ended up at the stage I would have. So I think those are the first ones, to be understanding, obviously be non-judgmental, ask direct questions, don't be afraid to use the word suicide. If you are feeling like you're that worried about someone, don't be afraid to use the word. Ask them if they are a danger. But also, if you are going to speak to someone in that state, or be prepared for what may come out of it, and have information ready that you can signpost them to a service, or be ready to take them to hospital if you need to do so, so that we're not leaving them alone afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, every little kind of bit of advice helps, and as I say, anybody that's obviously maybe struggling or maybe kind of needing help, obviously I've got some helplines on, just on the page. Yeah, listen, it's been an amazing chat. Let's end on a positive note then. Congratulations are in order. Siobhan, you welcomed twins into your family a couple of months ago. How's that been to be blessed with twins now, as well as
it's obviously incredible. I think it's probably why I get emotional sometimes when I'm talking about it again now, because I think I've done loads of talks over the last 2 years, sort of sharing my story, and I always used to get emotional, and I went through a wee period of not getting so emotional about it. And I think the emotion's back now because very, very easily, my baby girls wouldn't have been here because I wouldn't have been here. And I think that's the sad reality. I'm getting emotional again, but yeah, it's life changing. It's amazing. Without going too much into my childhood and stuff, I always wanted to be a dad because I didn't have particularly good ones in my life. So I always wanted to show that I could do better than them. And now to have that opportunity, not only to my wee boy who is my best friend, but also to have our 2 wee girls now, are an absolute blessing. Now they're 4.5 weeks old, so it's hard work, I won't lie. Me and Siobhan are both up every couple of hours at night feeding. We're feeding them consistently all day. Sleep has been much maligned. We've not got many of it. We've not got much of it, sorry, both of us. But it's just an absolute blessing. People out there with kids will know how much of a blessing kids are, despite all the hard work, despite the trials and tribulations. Kids are so much fun. And I'm very... Twins are special in their own right, of course. They're fairly rare. My girls are identical, which is even rarer. I'm sure that the two of them will be very pleased and will enjoy having each other for the rest of their lives. And I'm just so pleased to be able to have the opportunity to be their dad.
Yeah, that's as I say, it's amazing, and as I say, if we can do anything at the Celtic FC appreciation page, just don't hesitate in giving us a message, kind of thing. As I say, so I'm just going to leave it there, Erin, if that's okay. Listen, thanks very much for coming on. It's been an amazing reaction, and I know that you'll get a lot of, hopefully a lot more people kind of coming forward and contacting yourselves and Siobhan at Time to Tackle, and it's going to go from strength to strength. I just know it, kind of thing. But as I say, thanks for coming on.
No,
as I say,
thank you so much.
No worries, mate. So as I say, we'll be back in Saturday, and me and Paul will be back in Saturday with the usual football chat. Hopefully, we're going to manage to get somebody else on with us to kind of chat Celtic. I'm working on that now. But as I say, I just want to say thanks to Erin. Thanks again for coming on, and I'll be back obviously next Wednesday with a new guest. But just to finish on, as I say, Time to Tackle is the page. As you can get them across the socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And obviously, we're always here at the Celtic FC appreciation page, as well as Time to Tackle. If anybody is struggling, if anybody needs to chat, it's always good to chat, kind of thing. But as for that, we'll see you on Saturday, guys, and thanks for tuning in. And remember, keep liking the pages, keep following, keep subscribing. Cheers, Erin.
Cheers, thank you.